And I didn't know about parenting. I didn't know that you could parent in distortion. I didn't know that there was parenting in distortion or parenting in truth. There's only two choices. There's either truth or distortion. That's it.
And if you're not purposefully choosing truth, if you don't see where truth is, you will default into parenting in distortion. It's not like you're doing it on purpose. You just default into distortion.
Hey friends, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It is Wednesday, January 17th, 2024. It's been a few weeks since we've done an update about Ruby, Franke, and the Jodi Hildebrandt case that we've been covering since August. And there was a new filing in court last week and an order that was granted by a judge today related to Jodi Hildebrandt. And the filing actually came from Kevin Franke, Ruby Franke's husband. The filing was seeking restitution for the kids and seeking to prevent Jodi Hildebrandt from selling her home. Jodi Hildebrandt amassed millions of dollars through her Connections classroom, which taught people about living in truth and in distortion. And along the way, she snatched up Ruby Franke, who ran the channel 8 Passengers, where she and her children were front and center, and all of their family antics were on display. Ruby and her kids were a Utah Mormon family that were part of a larger family of vloggers, including sisters and parents. And Ruby and Kevin's behavior on their channel first got eyes on it around 2019 and into 2020 as escalating behaviors by the parents to the kids continued to draw concern from viewers. More and more commentators and outlets started to look at what Ruby and Kevin were doing. At the time, there was nothing that was done. There was no police that got involved, and the children remained with their parents. Fast forward to 2023, and Ruby is arrested in August. She is separated from her husband Kevin. She had abandoned her channel 8 Passengers and had turned into a mom that taught parents about being a parent to their kids and teaching parents how to live in truth rather than distortion. And she and Jodi teamed up to have a YouTube channel. And in that time, according to court records and to what Kevin has said and to what Ruby has said, Jodi systematically alienated Kevin from the family and really alienated Ruby from her whole world, from her siblings, from her parents, from everything that she had once known. And Ruby and her 2 youngest children, at some point in spring of 2023, end up down in Ivins, Utah. Well, we all know what happened next, and we all know that an arrest came in August. We know that Ruby pled guilty, and recently, at the end of December, Jodi pled guilty. So both Jodi and Ruby have pled guilty to 4 counts, and both have their sentencing, which will be scheduled in February. Both women, having agreed to a plea deal with the prosecuting attorney in St. George, have agreed to serve time behind bars and have all of their sentences served consecutively, meaning that each sentence will go one after another. The maximum time they could potentially serve behind is 60 years, though it's highly unlikely that that will happen. In the meantime, Kevin Franke, who was once separated from Ruby, he filed for divorce from her in November. In that time, Ruby has issued a statement saying that she's sad about her marriage falling apart, but she understands why Kevin is doing this. And Kevin and Ruby had been separated for about a year when all of this went down, and he hadn't seen his kids in months. So he was never charged for what happened to the children. The kids were removed from the custody of both parents, and Ruby has not left her timeout that she's currently sitting in Washington County in Utah. Kevin is up in Salt Lake, but he still does not have custody of his kids. The kids remain in state custody, and he claims that the juvenile case for the kids, the child custody case, should be wrapped up no later than September 2024. And he is of the belief that he will have custody of the kids in September of 2024. Of course, there's no way of knowing if that will truly happen because it's up to a judge in the county in northern Utah to make that call, and the case is sealed. So right now we can only go based on the words of what is filed in court, but Kevin now is filing for his kids to receive restitution from Jodi, even though he has no custody of them. But under the Utah law, the kids are actually eligible for restitution for what they did. And the state of Utah and the judge has agreed with Kevin that Jodi has the means to pay for everything that the kids will need in order to recover. So the filing, which was filed last week on the 12th, the order came in today, and it was an order for a temporary injunction and restraining order from Jodi to selling her home. So she put her home on the market. It was actually listed, and it's like an article on Realtor. And the house is gorgeous. It's like 10,000 square feet, and she's selling it for $5.3 million. So it says this matter is before the court on the motion of Kevin Franke to establish restitution and for ex parte prejudgment, writ of attachment, and restraining order. Mr. Franke is the father of the minor children in this matter. He and the motion and the pleadings submitted in the support thereof are being sufficiently informed to the premise. So they said that he is the parent of the 2 minor children who were harmed by Jodi, that on December 27th, she pled guilty based upon the verification of Mr. Franke, and it was not contradicted by Jodi's counsel. The children have undergone medical care and have been subjected to psychological assessments and ongoing medical health treatment in an attempt to assist them in comprehending and recovering from their injuries. They have undergone medical care and have been subjected to psychological assessments and ongoing mental health treatment in an attempt to assist them in comprehending, understanding, and recovering. The children remain in professional care for the psychological and emotional problems that they endured because of Jodi. And it is clear that, and admitted that the children have been caused irreparable harm as a result of what Jodi did. What I think is interesting is that he filed divorce from Ruby. And at no point in this filing is Ruby's case at all mentioned. He doesn't mention that part of the reason the kids are in this place isn't just because of Jodi, but also because of Ruby. So he's really going short here and not even mentioning Ruby. And I should also note that in their divorce filing, even though he's filed for divorce, there's nothing that's been filed into that case since he filed back in the end of November. So he's not seeking restitution from Ruby. He's only seeking restitution from Jodi, and my guess is because Jodi is wealthier than Kevin and Ruby. They have joint assets, I'm assuming at this point, Kevin and Ruby. But it's just, to me, it just feels like a little bit of a miss. Like, we're putting all the blame on Jodi. Yes, she was the therapist. Yes, she was the woman that sort of masterminded this. But at the same time, Ruby also was part of it. So it's generally undisputed that these children will require long-term professional care and extending beyond February 20th, 24, when they're sentenced. So it says once the juvenile case concludes hopefully by September of 2024, the cost for the ongoing professional help will fall upon the children and their father. This would be completely inequitable result that they would have to pay for their own treatment that were caused by the defendant. It sounds like a lot of what they're going through is actual medical care. So if they have insurance, a lot of that would go to insurance, but it sounds like there's a law in the state of Utah that pays for restitution. So the cost for the ongoing therapy and treatment is presently unknown to father, but he represents that it could be established prior to sentencing. The defendant presently has the resources from which this restitution could be funded. but such may not soon be the case, in that resources may be liquidated and unavailable for access should the court fail to immediately delay or prevent said liquidation or transfer. The defendant would suffer no prejudice. Under the CV Restitution Act, they are entitled to restitution, which will compensate them by way of the defendant providing restitution for any and all ongoing treatment. So not only is she charged criminally, but there's a state law that says that she also has to pay for what she's caused to the children. The defendant has assets and resources sufficient to assist in the payment of this in the form of real estate, financial accounts, and other personal property. They discovered that on January 4th, defendant had listed her home for sale and the real property is located in Ivins, Utah, which was at least one location where incidents were committed against the children. This property consists of real and personal property belonging to the defendant, located in the state of Utah. It has all of the information propped up as far as like what the plat is. And it says, upon information and belief, it is also believed the defendant owns other personal property of value, including automobiles, a side-by-side, and at the time of the commission of these acts had financial accounts, including but not limited to checking, savings, certificates of deposit, 401ks, and all of their accounts, either in the name of the defendant or being held by third-party entities, including but not limited to Pam Botcher, Connections LLC, and other third-party entities. So they're naming one of the business associates here. There's no fines for taxes on this. There's no like liens out against this property. And they're asking that the property, it hasn't been seized by any other warrants by the state for the case. And except for an existing mortgage, there's no other person or entity that has any interest to this property. So they're basically asking for court to bar her from profiting it. So they're saying the listing sales price is at 5.1. I think it's 5.3 now. It is assumed that there is significant equity in the home. However, without knowledge of the existing mortgage, petitioner is not aware of the exact amount of anticipated profit. However, to the extent there is profit, the children should be entitled to a share sufficient to provide restitution for all in their ongoing expenses. So they believe that she's trying to conceal her assets by selling her property, and that in an attempt to liquidate, she's trying to make it so that like she doesn't have to pay for anything that happened to the kids. And they apparently asked Jodi's lawyers before they even filed for this to not go ahead with the sale, or they would seek a restraining order. And Jodi went ahead with it anyway. And here's the thing is, she could very well be, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, trying to conceal assets, but it's also possible that she has bills that she needs to pay. Like she knows that she's going to have a defense attorney that she needs to pay. She's probably got outstanding bills that she has to pay, and she's no longer working or making any income. So it's likely that she's liquidating assets, not just to conceal it from them, but also to pay off her own debts. But they're saying that the debts of the children supersede everything else. And the court agreed. So the court went ahead and asked and placed what's called a writ of attachment to the real property, and that they order that the defendant or any of her representatives are restrained from signing, disposing of, concealing, and transferring property until the sentencing of the defendant, at which set for February 20th. Any security requirement or otherwise imposed upon the petitioner is hereby waived, and that the petitioner is representative of the crime victims of the minor families. So they've set a hearing for February 1st to go over it and to discuss the injunction, and that's on February 1st. So right now she is barred from selling the property and concealing it or transferring it to anyone else. And it doesn't say anything about any of those accounts that she had. So it mentioned that she has checking accounts, savings accounts, 401ks. This is only as it relates to the property because that's the one that she's trying to sell. And they said that they don't know what the mortgage is. That can actually, I think they can find that out through the county, but what do I know? So the good news here is that the judge has ordered that Jodi can't sell her house. The good news here is that somebody's advocating for the kids. The good news is that the kids are still getting help and they're getting the resources that they need. The bad news is that they have to get this help in the first place. And one caveat that I don't like is that, yes, Jodi did do this, but also Ruby did as well. And because divorces in the state of Utah, you can't, beyond, the complaints are all sealed, most divorce records are sealed. So beyond getting like the final judgment, we won't know what Kevin says about Ruby. He's been very guarded in what he said about Ruby and what he said about her responsibility, only so much as admitting that he believes his children and that he can't be married to her anymore. And she's going to be incarcerated. And Randy, his attorney, the last I watched of an interview with him, had mentioned that they anticipate that she'll be sentenced and serve considerable time behind bars. So Jodi was flying high and was making a lot of money through her work as a therapist that was receiving referrals from the LDS Church to help with marriage relationships. And now she's on the verge of some sort of financial destitution because she's unloading her property and now she's barred from trying to sell it to avoid actually helping the children. When Jodi pled guilty and when Ruby pled guilty, there was sort of like this back and forth where Ruby basically blamed Jodi for everything and said that, you know, she was alienated from everyone and that Jodi took control of her life and all of these, you know, she never would have done this if not for Jodi, and that she had been brainwashed and all of these different aspects. She pled guilty, but blamed Jodi. Do what you want with that. Jodi, on her side of things, said, you know, one of the agreements for Ruby was that she was going to testify against Jodi. And then Jodi's attorneys came out and were like, yeah, we already pled guilty because we don't want to put the kids through anything more. We want to prevent them from testifying. So acting like you're doing a favor and you're going to testify against us is ridiculous because we've already pled guilty. I don't know how this is going to shake out, but it seems like if you're going off her statements of saying that, like, I don't want to put the kids through any more pain, but then trying to liquidate your assets, it's like you're saying one thing publicly, then privately doing things to not help the children. Even though they've pled guilty, I just don't think, at least I don't think Jodi has remorse. That's my belief. And her actions here kind of show that. And it's good for Kevin to stick up for the kids. I just hope at some point he gets to the point where he can actually condemn what Ruby has done to her kids. And interestingly, Kevin has not been charged. The kids are not in his custody, and he believes he's going to get the custody back. And Jodi and Ruby will have their sentencing on February 20th. Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Bye.